Good day. This is Dr. John Bennett broadcasting from Miami Beach, the headquarters of Neurosurgical TV. I don't know why Dr. Gubullo's screen's on there, but anyways, we have a lecture by Naru Bankol, a neurosurgical resident from Morocco. He's going to present on glioma. But first, let's go around and meet the panelists. Okay, let's start with Ulrich. Ulrich, how are you doing today?
Hello, John. Hello, everyone. So I'm Ulrich Sidney, currently a research associate at the program in global surgery at Harvard. Nice to meet you all.
Very good. Welcome, Ulrich. Serge, how are you doing today? Serge Eddie Maba. Can you introduce yourself, Serge? Are you there, Serge? He may have stepped away. Zolo, how are you doing?
Hello, Dr. John. Hello to everybody. I'm doing good. I'm doing great. I'm Zolo Ivan. I'm a fifth-year medical student from the University of Buea. I'm a member of the Association of Future African Neurosurgeons. Happy to be there.
Great. You got a great talk on cerebral cortex last Friday. Welcome. Nathalie, hello. Hello, Nathalie. Can you please introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Nathalie Christel. I'm an MD in Cameroon and a member of African Future Neurosurgeons.
Very good. Welcome, Nathalie. And Marco.
Okay. Hello, everybody, boys and girls. My name is Marco Meloni. I'm a consultant neurosurgeon in Italy, close to Como.
Just returned from Mayo Clinic in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Welcome, Marco. Maybe we'll talk about that later. Okay, Naru, it's all yours.
Yes, John. Hello, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to come to join us today. And it is so long time, Mr. Dr. Marco Meloni. Nice to
yeah. Pleased to meet you again.
Yes. So today it is my pleasure today to present intracranial glioma. I will present intracranial glioma today. So I will gonna share my screen. Okay, I don't know if you see my screen, John.
Yes.
Okay, so we can start.
I don't know if you want to make the, there you go, perfect, okay, perfect.
Okay, great. So today we will talk about intracranial glioma, and I will use this plan. It is big topic, but I try to done it shortly, and I will start by introduction. I will talk about epidemiology, neuropathology, and pathogenesis, and the topography, clinical diagnosis, and the paraclinical diagnosis. The differential diagnosis we have to know, and what about the risk factor. I will talk about whole classification, about the glioma, the management, the follow-up, and the prognosis. And I will show you some case. I don't know if you have time to see all the case. I will show you one or two cases, and we will conclude, and I will show you my reference to make this topic. I will go ahead. Glioma derived from the glial cells is the most common primary malignant tumor in the human central nervous system, accounting for about 65% of primary intracranial tumor. The incidence of glioma has been sharply increasing worldwide in recent years. And glioma have many different types, and the prognosis of glioma of different grades is affected by many factors. Surgery remains the main therapeutic method, although other therapy such as radiotherapy and chemotherapy and our immunotherapy are also used to treat the patient. However, even if treated with surgery combined with a post-operative chemotherapy and radiotherapy, the prognosis is still poor and the recurrence is high. According to the World Health Organization classification scheme, gliomas are morphologically diagnosed as astrocytic, oligodendroglial, and mixed oligoastrocytic tumors, and are further subdivided into 1 to 4 malignant grade based on the extent of cell proliferation and angiogenesis and necrosis. What about the epidemiology? Glial tumor or gliomas account for about 50% of all intracranial tumor in adults, and 90% of them are of astrocytic origin. More than 50% of these tumors are malignant. Anaplastic astrocytoma and glioblastomas. Benign astrocytoma account for 20 to 30% of glioma. Other glial tumors are presented by oligodendroglioma and ependymomas. The average age of discovery of a benign astrocytoma as well on oligodendroglioma is around 40 years. And about anaplastic, it is 46 years and 56 years for glioblastomas. What the neuropathology? Kernohan system in 1952 divided astrocytic tumors into 4 histoprognostic grades based on the following histological criteria. It is the number of mitosis, nuclear polymorphism, and necrosis and endothelial vascular proliferation. Grade 1 is the most benign grade. The only tumor that falls into the category is pilocytic astrocytoma. Grade 2 also correspond to benign tumor, including fibrillary and protoplasmic astrocytoma and gematocytic astrocytoma. The latter, however, behaves more aggressively than the other two. The World Health Organization has 3 grades: benign glioma grade 1 and 2, anaplastic glioma grade 3, and glioblastoma grade 4. It appears that only endothelial vascular proliferation characterizing anaplastic astrocytoma and necrosis characterizing glioblastomas are statistically related to survival. What about the pathogenesis? For over a century, such microscopic evaluation has provided the gold standard for the diagnosis of gliomas. Assessment of prognosis and form the basis for therapeutic management. However, multiple studies show that a purely histopathologic classification suffer from considerable inter and intra-observer variability. Assessment of prognosis and form the basis for therapeutic management. However, multiple studies show that a purely histopathologic classification. Okay, can I continue, John? The intra-observer variability. Can I continue, John? Okay, can I continue, John? Can I continue, John?
Dr. John, your microphone is off, so we can't hear you.
Yeah, okay. Okay, it wasn't coming from me. Okay. Go ahead, go ahead, Nero. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, John. So I'm talking about the pathogenesis.
Yeah, okay.
The pathogenesis and molecular evolution of glioma are often characterized by somatic chromosomal aberration with spread of focal copy, number change, and targeted gain and loss of function. Various permutation of somatic alteration.
Naru, I think you have another program open on your computer. Okay, you've got to get off everything except for this program. I think you're on Facebook Live also. Okay, that's where we're getting interference from. Okay, try it now. I don't hear it now.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was talking about the pathogenesis. So the pathogenesis and molecular evolution of glioma are often characterized by somatic chromosomal aberration, widespread or focal copy, number change, and target gain and loss of function even in oncogene and tumor suppressor gene. Various permutations of somatic alteration were shown to be associated with distinct tumor entities and differential sensitivity to treatment, such as a chromosome 1p 19q code deletion in oligodendroglioma, conferring increased sensitivity to chemotherapy. There are three types of normal glial cells that can produce tumor, and astrocyte will produce astrocytoma, including glioblastomas, and oligodendrocyte will produce oligodendrogliomas, and ependymoma come from ependymal cells. Tumors that display a mixture of these different cells are called mixed gliomas. Tumors such as optic nerve glioma and brainstem glioma are named for their location, not the tissue type from which they originate. Three types of normal glial cells can produce tumor, like astrocyte, oligodendrocyte, and ependymal cells. Tumors that display a mixture of these cells are called mixed glioma, like you can see here, astrocytoma, ependymoma, and oligodendroglioma. In the course of the last 2 decades, it became increasingly clear that such molecular characteristics may provide a more robust and objective basis for subtyping of diffuse glioma, and both scientists and clinicians turn toward molecular markers to aid diagnosis. Indeed, the International Society for Neuropathology Harlem Consensus Guidelines and the most recent edition of the WHO classification of CNS tumors, published in 2016, embrace the notion of an integrated histomolecular classification of diffuse glioma. That is one of models of the molecular life history of glioma prior to becoming clinically manifest. The temporal sequence of events can be subdivided into five represented in different color, like you can see here, A, B, C, D, and E here. A, it is the number of dividing cells or proliferation rate across each phase. Proliferation peaks toward the end of growth phase and dips going into senescence phases. The tumor mass across each phase tumor increases exponentially during growth phase and logarithmically during senescence phase. Telomere length across each phase, telomere length over time follows a pattern that is inverse to tumor mass. And here you can see cell doubling diaphragm indicating the growth barrier senescence phase and resulting selection bottleneck, and somatic in E here, somatic alteration associated with different phases in gliomagenesis. So what about the topography? In glioma, we can have glioma in frontal lobe, temporal lobe, parietal, in crossroads, rarely occipital and rarely intraventricular, you can see here. We can see glioma in brain nuclei, multicentric gliomas. It is rare also, 2 to 3% in frontal wings, bilateral tumor infiltration, and like I told you, you can have optic nerve glioma, brainstem glioma, but not. It is just the area. What about the clinical diagnosis? You have to know that clinically, glioma, it is one pathology who comes slowly. It's not acute. So we can have secondary epilepsy like manifestation. You can have topographic syndrome like frontal syndrome, parietal syndrome. You can have neurological deficit in oil stain, it is not acute neurological deficit. It is an insidious installation, it is slowly, the deficit comes slowly, not acute. And you can have increase of intracranial pressure, and you can have ischemic or hemorrhagic stroke to reveal a glioma. CT scan. For paraclinical diagnosis, we can have CT scan, but it's CT scan with injection. Here you can see irregular zinc margin, ISO, to slightly hyper-attenuating, high cellularity. Irregular hypodense center representing necrosis, marked mass of effect, surrounding vasogenic edema, and sometimes you can see hemorrhage is occasionally seen and calcification, like you can see here, some calcification around, and intense irregular heterogeneous enhancement on the margin is almost always present. The MRI is the gold standard of paraclinical diagnosis. T1, you will see glioma in hypo to iso-intense, mass within white matter, central heterogeneous necrosis, and when you see this image in T1 with gadolinium and after gadolinium injection, you will see enhancement is variable, but it almost always present, typically peripheral and irregular. Like you can see here, this enhancement peripheral, irregular with nodular component usually surround the necrosis, and into T2 that was hyperintense, surround vasogenic edema, flow, void are occasionally seen. Indeed, it is one case who you see here the invasion invasion to the ventricular. So we have those exam paraclinical like DWI and ADC to make difference of the solid component. You will see elevated on DWI is common in solid enhancement component. ADC value correlated with grade, but I will not talk about that. It's just for information to know that you can see correlation between ADC value with the glioma grading. Non-enhancement necrotic cystic component, the vast majority, support than 90%, have facilitated diffusion. Care must be taken in interpreting cavity with blood product. So we can use another sequence like MR perfusion and spectroscopy, typical choline increasing, lactate increasing, lipid increasing, and NAA decreased and myo-inositol decreased. That showed that we are in high grading proliferation. So what is the key point? You have to know when reporting a new diagnosis of a mass that is likely a glioblastoma, it is useful to include the morphology, That's the main. The size in 3 dimensions, degree of central necrosis, no enhancing tumor involving cortex, deep gray or white matter. Look at ADC for lower values, presence of necrosis. And what about the relationships to involvement of eloquent areas, major white matter tract, large vessels? What about the extension across midline into brainstem, subependymal spread, CSF dissemination? That is important to know that to planify your management. What about the differential diagnosis? General imaging differential consideration include cerebral metastases, may look identical, both may appear multifocal. Metastases usually are centered on gray white matter junction and sphere, the overlying cortex. Primary CNS lymphoma should be considered, especially in patients with AIDS, as in this setting, central necrosis is more common. Otherwise, usually homogeneously enhancing. Cerebral abscess, central restricted diffusion is helpful. However, if glioblastoma is hemorrhagic, then assessment may be difficult. Presence of smooth and complete SWI low intensity, presence of dual rim signs, it is double signs in MRI. Anaplastic astrocytoma should not have central necrosis, so we consider it that like histology sampling bias. Tumefaxine demyelinization, subacute cerebral infarction, and cerebral toxoplasmosis also have to be considered like a differential diagnosis. What about the risk factor? Like most primary brain tumor, the exact cause of glioma is not known, but there are some factors that may increase your risk of a brain tumor. Risk factor includes the age, exposure to radiation, and the history of family. Your risk of a brain tumor increases as you age, so glioma are most common in adults between age 45 and 65 years old. However, a brain tumor can occur at any age. Certain types of glioma, such as ependymoma and pilocytic astrocytomas, are more common in children and young adults. Exposure to radiation. People who have been exposed to a type of radiation called ionizing radiation have an increased risk of brain tumor. Example of ionizing radiation include radiation therapy used to treat cancer and radiation exposure caused by atomic bomb. More common form of radiation, such as electromagnetic fields from power lines and radiofrequency, radiation from microwave, often have not been shown to increase the risk of glioma. It isn't clear whether cell phone use increases the risk of brain cancer. Some studies have found a possible association between cell phone use and a type of brain cancer called acoustic neuroma. Many other studies have found no association. Because cell phones are a relatively new factor, more long-term research is needed to understand the potential impact on cancer risk. For the time being, if you are concerned about the possible link between cell phone and cancer, experts recommend limiting your exposure by using a speaker or hands-free device, which keeps the cell phone itself away from your head. We can have like a family history of glioma like risk factor. It is rare for glioma to run in families, but having a family history of glioma can double the risk of developing it. Some genes have been weakly associated with glioma, but more study is needed to confirm a link between these genetic variation and brain tumor. So what is about the WHO classification? In WHO classification, last classification, it is 2007 WHO classification, and now we use 2016 WHO classification. In 2007, we have diagnosis like oligodendroglioma WHO grade 2, anaplastic oligodendroglioma WHO grade 3, oligoastrocytoma WHO grade 2, anaplastic oligoastrocytoma WHO grade 3, diffuse astrocytoma WHO grade 2, anaplastic astrocytoma whole grade 3, and glioblastoma whole grade 4. In 2016, we have now, we include molecular characteristic. So now we talk about diffuse astrocytoma EDH wild type, grade 2, anaplastic astrocytoma EDH wild type, who grade 3, glioblastoma EDH wild type, who grade 4. And like you can see here, that is the type of neuroanatomopathological figure, astrocytoma, EDH wild type. And about astrocytoma pilocytic who grade 1, common in children and young adults and in people with neurofibromatosis type 1 and rarely cause death. Diffuse astrocytoma who grade 2, also known as low-grade diffuse astrocytoma. It is common in young adults and in people with Lee-Fomeni syndrome. It commonly forms in the cerebrum, but can form in any part of brain. It grows slowly, often spreading into nervous tissues. It can progress to become an anaplastic astrocytoma or a glioblastoma. Grade 3, also known as malignant astrocytoma or high-grade astrocytoma. This kind of tumor is more often found in younger adults. It forms in the cerebrum. It grows quickly and spreads into nervous tissues. An anaplastic astrocytoma may transform and become a glioblastoma. Also known glioblastoma grade 4, also known as glioblastoma multiforme. About 50% of the glioblastoma are glioblastomas. It grows and spreads rapidly and has the highest degree of malignancy but poor prognosis. Now you can see here the classification with subtyping. You can see here like ependymal tumor, you will see subependymoma, myxopapillary ependymoma, papillary ependymoma, clear cell ependymoma, and tanicytic ependymoma. And you can see after RELA fusion positive, you can see anaplastic ependymoma. And other glioma, you can see chordoid glioma of the third ventricle, angiocentric glioma, and astroblastoma, but it is rare. And you can see mixed neuronal gliotumor like ganglioglioma, anaplastic ganglioglioma, desmoplastic infantile astrocytoma and ganglioglioma, papillary glioneuronal tumor, rosette-forming glioneuronal tumor, and diffuse leptomeningeal glioneuronal tumor. What about the management? The management, nowadays, we know that the management depends more factors, depends the age, depends the clinical status of the patient, depends about the volume of tumor, depends about the location of the glioma. But biopsy and tumor debulking with postoperative adjuvant radiotherapy and chemotherapy are the most commonly carried out treatment. Newer therapies include anti-angiogenesis like bevacizumab and immunotherapy. In individuals of 70 years of age or younger standard, stop protocol is usual nowadays. In older individuals, radiotherapy is usually administered as a shorter course, but even in this setting, adding temozolomine significantly increase survival, especially in GMT methylated inactive tumor. Despite this, it carries a poor prognosis with a median survival of fewer than 2 years. What about the surgical management? We have to know that nowadays, the surgical management is palliative. Excision of malignant glioma should be as complete as possible. In fact, we try to make room. Need for postoperative MRI to assess the quality of resection that appears to affect prognosis. Pilocytic astrocytoma, the total treatment is the treatment of the choice, and the survival as 10 years reached that like 100%. It is 44% with a simple biopsy. And you have to know that nowadays we use awake surgery to remove glioma when the glioma is an eloquent area, like example. The medical management, we can use steroid, diuretic, anti-epileptic to fight seizures, and chemotherapy. The inefficiency of chemotherapy is related to the presence of the blood-brain barrier. So different ways are proposed to avoid this obstacle, like intrathecal, intratumoral, or intra-arterial injection, liposoluble drugs, or prodrugs transformed in the brain. All those is new. It is new management, new technique of management. It is not common. Several studies evaluating antimitotic chemotherapy are underway. The search for an effective intratumoral concentration led to the proposal of intra-arterial, intravenous chemotherapy with aplasia of medulla followed by autologous marrow transplantation. The use of an in situ character connected to a reservoir containing antimitotic drugs is also proposed. Immunotherapy and gene therapy are in the preliminary stage. I think I have problems because I don't see. Yes, I am here. Okay, sorry. So several studies evaluating antimitotic chemotherapy are underway. The search for an effective intratumoral concentration led to the proposal of intra-arterial intravenous chemotherapy with aplasia of the medulla, followed by autologous marrow transplantation. The use of an in situ catheter connected to a reservoir containing antimitotic drug is also proposed. Immunotherapy and gene therapy are in the preliminary stage. Radiotherapy, we can use 60 grays delivered in 6 weeks, but an aggravation of the clinical picture can be observed during the first week of irradiation. Radionecrosis can appear from the 4th month and sometime after several years. CT and MRI imaging are non-specific. Treatment consists of high-dose corticosteroid therapy, not also the possibility of post-radiotherapy cerebral atrophy. EOD 125 interstitial irradiation is being evaluated. So what about the indication? For benign astrocytomas diagnosed after biopsy, sampling by stereotaxis, surgical abstention is recommended with clinical CT and MRI monitoring. Complete excision of pilocytic astrocytoma provide very good long-term results. With regard to other tumors, surgical excision is recommended associated with radiotherapy and corticosteroid therapy, which is particularly effective on the clinical state. What about the follow-up and prognosis? Despite treatment, the probability of survival of glioblastoma at 5 years is 0. At 3 years, it is less than 2%. The median survival varies between 6 months and 1 year. For anaplastic astrocytoma, the probability of survival at 5 years is about 40%. The survival rates of so-called benign astrocytoma remain to be determined because of new data in particular city. The prognosis factors are the histological type. 55% of well-differentiated astrocytoma become anaplastic and 30% transform into glioblastoma. Age, preoperative clinical state, it is very important. Neurological and general defect, Karanowski score is also important to know. So what about the negative prognosis factor includes the degree of necrosis, the degree of enhancement, depth of location like thalamus, MGMT not methylated, increase of age, lower pre-diagnosis functional status like power score of Karanowski. It is bad prognosis factor. The good prognosis factor of glioma of low grade, it is age under 40 years, epilepsy semiology, no contrast enhancement to imaging, no mass effect, tumor of small volume, cortical subcortical topography have a more favorable prognosis than bulky tumors of the same histology. So that is one study who analysis of the factor affecting the prognosis of glioma, who published online in 2019 April in Open Medicine Journal. It is one, I think it is Chinese authors. You can see here the clinical factor and number of cases and the survival. And you can see here males, common, we have 118 males for 68 female. And you can see here the number of survival. It is just 50% from survival, and in females you can see 58 survival. And about the age, when you take age fewer than 60, you have 71% of survival. But when you take age superior than 60, you see just 50% of survival. So age, maybe gender have you can say here females and the age further than 60 are good factor of prognosis. And you can see here when you have the diameter, but about the tumor diameter, the difference is not so big. And about the tumor grade, you can see here for who grade 1 and 2, you can see here 54% of survival. And in who grade 3 and who grade 4, we have just 45 survival. And when we see the Karnofsky score, superior than 70, you have 60% of survival, but inferior than 70, just 42% of survival. When we take the quality of resection, complete resection, we have 59% of survival, and about partial resection, just 42 survival. So you can see that it depends, like I told you, that it depends the age, depending of the grading, depending of clinical status of Karnofsky scores, and that is a good factor of prognosis. And you can see here about the patient who after surgical treatment, you can see here they receive the patient who receive radiotherapy. We have 50% of survival, but those who don't receive radiotherapy, you have 31%. About the chemotherapy, you can see here for those who receive chemotherapy, we have 59% of survival. In contrast here, for those who don't receive, just 38% for survival. So radiotherapy, chemotherapy help to fight against and to give more survival. So that is just one case of my department. You can see here female who come with secondary epilepsy and right hemiparesis 3-5 and Karnofsky like 80%. And you can see here temporal lobes here, this mass, who we can see here necrosis center, enhancing peripheral, and you can see components sometimes here about the cyst, and we perform temporal approach, and we remove like I can say this day we remove we don't do complete resection, but we remove subtotal. We done subtotal resection, and we send the patient in neuro-oncological department. So in conclusion, gliomas are often highly aggressive, and the prognosis is poor, and the survival time is short. Some risk factors have been found to contribute to the pathogenesis of gliomas, such as ionizing radiation, genetic syndromes, dietary and occupational exposures. Although surgical resection and post-operative radiotherapy and chemotherapy delay tumor progression, the overall cure rate is still low, the recurrence rate is high, the reported median survival time of this disease is only 40 months, and the median survival time is only about 1 year. So that is my reference. I use this big article to make this work because it is big topic. I try to make that so short to talk about the essentials, and we can discuss about all you want in few moments. And I thank you all for your attention, your comment, and approach is welcome. So thank you, everyone.
Very good. Thank you very much, Naru. Another comprehensive overview of gliomas. Thanks a lot. Pretty grim diagnosis, but let's go around the panel to have any comments or questions. Any comments or questions, Marco?
First of all, I want to congratulate with Noro. It's a great panel and very, very comprehensive all the main aspects of glioma, in particular the new classification of glioma. My question is, perhaps I lost a piece. How do you do the differential diagnosis between radionecrosis and recurrence of glioma?
Okay, you mean that how we done the difference between recurrence or radionecrosis in the patient that we managed before? You thought about patient that we manage, and in follow up you want to know what is the difference between radionecrosis or recurrence.
How do you do the diagnosis in terms of magnetic resonance imaging? Do you do biopsy before to consider a new craniotomy?
Okay, I think that what in my department that depends first of all what's going the clinical status of patient after surgery, after first surgery before to go to neuro-oncological to perform radiotherapy or chemotherapy. And second times we will compare the imaging of post-operative imaging, and in follow up the new imaging to see the morphology. If about the morphology, we see that we have increased about the diameter. We have in T1 gadolinium enhancing high the tumor take high contrast. In this case, we can say, oh, in this case we have recurrence. But sometimes when we can do the diagnosis, we just perform stereotactic biopsy to see if we have recurrence, or if it is if maybe the tumor we have transformation of the tumor in malignance or not. But sometimes it is very difficult. But the first time we focus about the clinical status of patient. If he has good clinical status, we just do biopsy stereotactic to be sure if we have recurrence or not. And if you have edema, because sometimes if that just radionecrosis, we will not have edema in T2. You will not have this edema. So that is some I don't know how can I say that, but always we do our best to make the difference. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree.
But I would like to know about your experience, how you do in your center to make the difference when patients come to follow up.
Well, actually, the biopsy, stereotactic biopsy, is the gold standard is the best way you can use to have a differential diagnosis. There are some works in literature that talk about the use of perfusion MRI that analyze the microvascularization around the mass, and usually the estimating this microvascularization, they found a statistical significance percentage of differentiation between the microvascularization of glioma that is a little bit poor than the most important vascularization of a radionecrosis. But actually the gold standard is stereotaxis. Biopsy is the best way to do. It's very simple and not so much invasive for the patients, and allow to understand if you need to reperform craniotomy exeresis or is just radionecrosis. So I totally agree with you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we have to pay attention about these pathologies about glioma. We know that it is one brain tumor who the prognosis it is not so good. So primum, I don't know if you know that this topic, primum non nocere. So do not harm, because sometimes it is better to send the patient to neuro-oncology, just perform biopsy, stereotactic, and send him to neuro-oncological department, and he will go well. Sometimes when you we try to perform craniotomy, sometimes post-operative it is so high risk, and sometimes patients die so soon. So it is, you have to think about that always.
Even because if you if there is a wrong doing differentiation between radionecrosis and recurrence, and you operate a radionecrosis, the risk of postoperative bleeding is very high.
No, in my department, no, we don't operate radionecrosis.
It was as a hypothesis. If if there is a wrong diagnosis and you operate a radionecrosis.
Yes, it is possible sometimes. Yes.
Hello, Carlos. Any comments or questions for Neru? And welcome, Carlos. Let me get you unmuted there. Okay, hold on, Carlos. Okay. Carlos is a neurosurgeon from Spain and Ecuador. Go ahead, Carlos.
Dear Carlos, welcome.
Good afternoon for everybody. Thank you very much, and congratulations. The topic that you speak about is very important and interesting for the medical people. But I can ask about you in the same line before me. What is the pathognomic differentiation between recurrence of tumor or radionecrosis? What about for example, MRI spectroscopy? Because for example, if you speak about that, the gold standard for the pathologic diagnosis is the biopsy or stereotactic biopsy of some kind of biopsy. But I all things is about one kind of surgery. But before that, we need to study very well the patient. We need to have a conclusion about if this will be on a radionecrosis or this will be a recurrence. But I think my ask is, what about MR spectroscopy in this situation, please?
Okay, I don't know if Neru, we lost him. Go ahead,
Neru. I understand what you say, and I am agree with you, dear Carlos. And like I said, sometimes we just perform stereotactic biopsy to be sure. If and that depends the clinical status of the patient. If the patient have good clinical status, we can just stand by and see. And in 3 or 6 months, perform another MRI with, like to say, we can use spectroscopy to see the rapport between choline and the NAA to see if you have increased. But I think when we don't have we can the diagnosis is so difficult to make in imaging. I think we can just go to do stereotactic biopsy.
Yeah, I understand you. That's the gold standard is the stereotactic biopsy. That it's good for doing it for everybody. But I think the question is how important is to decide from which part of the tumor or maybe tumor recurrence expected do you will take a biopsy? Because in many cases, or in all cases where you speak about recurrence or radionecrosis, there will be a both change. Because that's very frequent, they will be parallel, radionecrosis and recurrence in these cases. And how you will decide from which part of this lesion you will take a biopsy.
Okay, so I am agree with you, but in this case, you can analyze more the MRI. If you have edema, vasogenic edema, you can see maybe you are in recurrence. You have recurrence, and you have to compare the postoperative imaging and the new imaging to see what the difference between two imaging.
Yeah, I understand. I think so. This will be in some kinds very difficult to speak about that. My other question is, what is the relationship between a percentage of resection and the percentage of recurrence of tumor, or to get a very well response to other treatments? What is the relationship between the rate of resection and rate of recurrence?
Okay, like I see in many paper in literature, nowadays we know that if you have grade 1, 2 tumors, we know that we can, if we perform complete resection, the risk of recurrence, it is we can maybe more than 5 years to 10 years about the recurrence, about grade 1, 2. But,
no. The question is not in the grade 1, 2, or 3, or 4 of the gliomas gradation. I speak about the percentage of resection between the disease-free survival.
Okay, you talk about the recurrence about after resection.
Yeah, what is the relationship percentage of tumor resection and tumor-free survival, or recurrence percentage or recurrence grade?
About all tumors, grade 1, 2, or grade 3, 4.
No. The poor percentage of resection.
Like I read, it is, I think we have 30%. 30%. We have percentage like 30% recurrence. Recurrence of tumor. 30%.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I have a comment, Naru.
Yes.
I'm not a neurosurgeon. Those are pretty grim-looking 5-year survival. Wow. You know, from 0% and 2% after 5 years. Now, as a neurosurgical resident, and this is for all the neurosurgeons and the residents, when you look at a CT and you see a mass, can you tell pretty accurately? I know, of course, you need the biopsy, but can you tell from looking at a mass if it's a glioma? And if so, do you kind of go, wow, I hope it's an astrocytoma rather than a glioma?
Of course, all of neurosurgeons prefer to have astrocytoma than glioblastoma, because we know that astrocytoma, it is we have good outcome and follow up with astrocytoma. But we know that glioblastoma, we just have the median survival is just for 1 year, not than 1 year. Just 1 year, but astrocytoma, it is better. We prefer to remove astrocytoma.
Yeah, 40% 5-year survival. But when you look at a mass before it goes to the radiologist or for biopsy,
yes, of course, we know.
Can you tell when you look at it that is a glioblastoma?
Yes, we know, because in astrocytoma we have a characteristic in MRI about astrocytoma, because sometimes astrocytoma always have a component, a cystic component.
Okay.
But cystic component and solid with solid tumor. But and you will not have a big vasogenic edema. But when that is a case of glioblastoma, you will see solid tumor, irregularity, peripheral enhancing about the take of contrast about gadolinium. You will see big vasogenic edema in T2 seconds, and big mass effect, and the clinical status of patient also. All that, and the age of patient also. So all that make us to know, yes, in this case, obviously, it is an glioblastoma.
Okay.
Okay. Can I please?
Go ahead, Marco.
Yes.
Sorry.
Oh, was talking Natalie.
Go ahead, Natalie.
I was just asking. I think it is possible. It is how can I say? I don't think you have the certain diagnosis without the biopsy. I think you can estimate, or you can possibly think that it is the astrocytoma or glioblastoma, but it is not too certain. So I still think that it is the biopsy which will confirm you which kind of tumor it is. Since you have to do, as you said in your brilliant expose, you said that you have to do some molecular, biomolecular exams to orientate it on the type of the tumor.
I don't understand. If look, I think you mean that after biopsy, we can know if that is astrocytoma or glioblastoma.
No, I'm saying that the image is an orientation, but it's not a confirmation.
Yes, of course. Yes, I am agree with you. Yes, always we can just have an idea. Maybe it is astrocytoma, but sometimes we can say yes. Depends the age, depends the age, depends the clinical status, depend many things. You can when you have cystic component, sometimes we can say yes, this we in this case that is astrocytoma, but sometimes we can see many surprise. Sometimes you can see this tumor and you will see that it is glioblastoma, and when you come into operative room and you done extemporaneous histological extemporaneous in peroperative, the neuroanatomopathologist send you result that is the grade 2. So sometimes you say okay, but when you look at in imaging, that look like glioblastoma. So I am agree with you. Just in imaging, we can say and 100% yes, it is no. We need to confirm that with histological. I am agree with you. We need to confirm that. Yes.
Are there any schools of thought, Naru, that say for neurosurgeons to say don't do anything? It's a grim diagnosis, and we're just wasting our time. Do some neurosurgeons say there's really nothing you can do? I mean, that's a pretty grim diagnosis. A 0% 5-year survival, 2% or 2% 5-year, or whatever. The numbers are low. Are some physicians kind of like don't do anything?
Hmm?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, Dr. Melanie, you can go ahead, please. Go ahead, Dr. Marco.
Okay.
Oh, no, I was just highlight how the diagnosis of glioblastoma in particular is not always straightforward as it can seem.
Okay.
Of course, there are many aspects of the MRI that strongly suggest has that could be a glioblastoma. In particular, the massive brain edema around the mass is a great aspect that told us, oh my God, that is a glioblastoma. But sometimes it's not so
obvious.
So obvious, not at all. There exists some case where there could be another diagnosis. That's because I want to highlight that the exam of patients is very important to study the history, because there are several lesions that can masquerade the diagnosis, suggesting a glioma, but it's not it. In particular, when you have more than one lesion, just think if the patient is young, to consider also some diagnosis like vasculitis. Remember that primary vasculitis of the brain sometimes can appears like glioma. So strongly think about that. Examine the patient if there is some aspect like mucosa lesions or arthritis that can move you to another diagnosis. And sometimes happen also the exact contrary. For example, I published recently a case report about a young girl with a mass that originated from the dura mater, with dura tails, was everything. But it was not a meningioma, or as appears an anaplastic meningioma. It was a gliosarcoma, a primary gliosarcoma of the cerebellum.
From the dura.
Actually, the gliosarcoma is not from the dura, but is intimate with the dura. So give a suspect of a typical meningioma. And in a girl 30 years old, how she was, it could be, but it was 30 years old, and in fact, that's move for a diagnosis of glioma more than meningioma. In this case, obviously, the surgery was mandatory because she was in a hydrocephalus acute. So we need to perform a suboccipital craniotomy, remove the mass. Even because another aspect very important, she was young and she was pregnant.
Oh, pregnancy.
It was a dramatic situation.
That is a great case. You have to send me your article by mail, please, Dr. Marco. Me too. I sent 2 cases for publication, but not yet. It is about 2 cases about cells, osteosarcoma, small cells, osteosarcoma, but they look like meningioma. And the first time we think all of them, it is meningioma. But when we're going to operate, we see that is so, I don't know how, it is so hard to remove. We perform craniectomy with the mass, and after perform cranioplasty, and we send that from anapath, and that is an osteosarcoma, small cells. And another case, it is the same. The first result of histopathological told about meningioma, and just 3 months after to 6 months, we have big recurrence about the mass, and we say that's not normal, and we go again to reoperate the patient, and the second histological result showed them that is an osteosarcoma. So but that is in adult. But about gliosarcoma, I don't know more about gliosarcoma. So please send me your paper. I will read that too.
Yeah, of course, I send. But for everybody,
what is the prognostic? The prognosis about gliosarcoma?
Well, does depend because we have two forms of gliosarcoma. One is from a glioblastoma that evolve in a sarcomatosis way and is very, very is quite bad. But actually, it is a bad prognosis, but is a little bit better than glioblastoma, probably because you have the component, sarcoma component. So sarcoma usually has a better prognosis, even worse, of course, but a little bit better than glioblastoma. So it seems from the author in literature that if you have a more component of sarcoma than glioblastoma, the prognosis could be better. If you have more glioblastoma or there is an evolution of glioblastoma irradiated into sarcomatosis way, the prognosis is tremendously bad.
So I am agree with you because of course in osteosarcoma the prognosis is so bad. All my 2% don't live more than 1 year. So it is so bad. So you agree if you have more part of sarcoma in than glial cells, prognosis may be so bad. Yes, I understand. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a general question, Neuro. If you have a lesion, do you have to open the skull to biopsy it, or are there other ways of biopsying a lesion? If you suspect a glioma or you want to get a histological diagnosis, do you have to crack the skull, or do you do it endoscopically, a biopsy? This obviously, I'm not a neurosurgeon.
Endoscopy biopsy?
Yeah, how would you biopsy a lesion, mass?
I think it is depends the location. If you have maybe third ventricle intraventricle tumors look like glioma, and you want to perform endoscopic, you can perform septotomy and after go to take pieces just to do biopsy. But I don't think you can remove all. But maybe some teams done removal that by endoscopy. I don't know. I don't have experience about it, but I know in my department we made 2 or 3 times septotomy and remove pieces about intraventricular tumors. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, John.
Go ahead, Nathalie.
I have 2 questions. It goes for all the neurosurgeons and residents who are there. Why do they do a stereotactic biopsy instead of a biopsy, an open biopsy?
You have to know that we have indication. Okay, there are indication about biopsy stereostatic and go to perform craniectomy to removal. You will not do craniectomy to just done biopsy. You perform craniectomy to done partial resection or complete resection. But about biopsy, to have your diagnosis, to confirm your diagnosis, it is an stereotactic biopsy. It's different. So when you perform craniectomy, it is to perform partial resection or total resection. I don't know if you agree with me.
Can I tell you one thing?
Go ahead.
Perhaps Natalie want to say, why don't you remove the tumor directly instead of do biopsy and then removal? That's it, Natalie?
Okay. I understand now. Yes, of course. Like I told you, we have some indication. If we know that it is better to go directly to done craniectomy, because sometimes you can see just the clinical status of your patient. If you have good Karnofsky, your patient don't have any deficit, maybe just epilepsy, clinical just epilepsy. He's young, and or maybe depend the age. We can say depends the age, because sometimes in adult we just perform a biopsy, but depends the age, depends the clinical status, depends the volume of the tumor, okay, and the clinical signs. you can perform just biopsy. But if you have large mass, okay, you have effect mass, okay, big effect mass. You know that just to do biopsy will not help your patient. So you have to remove the tumor, you have to decompress, you have to perform, you have to remove like you can the tumor to help chemotherapy and radiotherapy to work if you want to give more chance for your patient when radiotherapy and chemotherapy work well, you have to remove more tumors, you have to decompress. That is in this case. I don't know if you understand, but sometimes when it is small tumors, just perform biopsy to know the diagnosis. It is better, and send your patient to neuro-oncological department to perform chemotherapy, radiotherapy. So that depends the imaging, the type of your, the diameter of your tumor, the volume, the clinical status, Karnofsky scores. That depends many things, and the age of your patient. And all that you make correlation to make decision about what the management is better for your patient.
Okay. I have
I
a
don't know
question.
if it's
Go
clear.
ahead. Go ahead. Someone have a remark?
Thank you, Dr. I have a second question.
Go ahead.
Why is there a genetical difference between people who have a long survivor under glioblastoma and those who have short survivor?
I don't understand. I don't hear you well.
Could you repeat that, Nathalie?
Please.
Yes, I was asking, is there a genetic difference or biomolecular difference between long survivor survivor on glioblastoma and short survivors?
Yes. Some studies show that when your glioblastoma have MGMT methylated, you can have more good outcome more than when you don't when you have glioblastoma who don't meet it. But all that it is depend about the molecular study, but like EDH mutant, non-EDH mutant, it depends. But about that, I don't have more experience about that too. But I know that nowadays, depending the molecular type, like EDH mutant or non-mutant, we can have short difference between the survival rates. But it's not also big. Anyway, just 1 year's mean survival.
Clinically, how do these present? I mean, I've as an emergency physician, I've heard of gliomas being discovered incidentally. One patient was struck in the head. He had a CAT scan, and they said, "Oh, you have a mass lesion." How do most people present? And does a patient with glioma present different than another mass lesion? Is there a difference in presentation of glioma clinically? Or it's the same with any mass lesion of the brain? Or is that a stupid question? Or do you notice any difference in clinical presentation of a glioma compares to another mass lesion of the brain?
I don't hear you. I don't know if Marco Meloni hear you. You can go ahead, Marco. If you hear.
Yeah, I hear, but you want to answer you, Naro, or I tell you? I don't know.
Yes, answer, Marco.
Okay, well,
Please.
difference obviously, John, depend by the tumor. Consider that low-grade glioma or meningioma grow quite slowly, so the presentation is not so dramatic like for glioblastoma. Glioblastoma, fortunately, grow very fast. So sometimes you have also, as you just told us some cases that you find in emergency department. That's why, because they, as a neuro told us in his slide, the first symptoms is a seizure, epilepsy. So epilepsy move the patient in emergency department, perform CT scan, and there is the glioma. But there are also other cases where the patients get drowsiness. Drowsiness in a very, very fast way. I had a case last years of a man 6 years old that came in emergency department with symptoms of stroke, of ischemic strokes.
Okay.
It was, in fact, I hear from the emergency call, doctor, we're moving a patient with suspect stroke, probably need to have decompression, cranial decompression. And when he came, there was a hypodense mass around the basal nuclei. So at the first I thought, okay, is an ischemia of the basal nuclei. But then when I saw also a great amount of edema, I told it's better to do contrast, and in fact it was a glioblastoma. Dramatic, and in fact there was no way even to do a biopsy. The patients pass away after I think 10 days.
Okay.
It was very, very dramatic.
Okay. A very grim disease. Okay. Any other closing comments or questions?
Hello.
Go ahead, Carlos.
But I think that all mass region in the brain have a very height difference between one of them. So many characteristics that will be analyzed in the radiodiagnostic imaging, such as CT, MRI, or in a nuclear imaging, such as a PET. For example, we can look if where is localized the brain lesion. Is it intraparenchymatous or extraparenchymatous, intraaxial or extraaxial? What is the spreading way? How can see the infiltration, delimitation of the lesion? What's about if enhancing or not enhancing contrast? It is heterogeneous or homogeneous enhancing? So many things that we need to keep in mind to make a differential diagnosis. But the fact the biopsy will be the gold standard at this time. We cannot replace this way at this moment. But I think it's very important to know that who I can apply, who are working in the neuro-oncologic part, we need to know so many kinds of these change that will be see in the so many kinds of studies such as radiodiagnostics. In the other sides, very important when we treat the patients with a high-grade glioma or glioblastoma, that how can to extend to a resection of the lesions. What about the relationship about the proportion or the percentage of resection with quality of life of the patient? We need to see, because we the first goal at this time in the management of the high-grade gliomas is to keep in mind the quality of life of patients. And for the other side, for example, we need or we treat to resect the lesion at least than 85% of lesion. If you are resecting less than 80% of the mass lesion, the recurrence risk is very high. The disease-free survival time will be very short, and the quality of life of the patient will be the same, very poor. So we need to take a lot of things to analyze before beginning the management of the patient with high-grade glioma.
Yes.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Okay,
I am totally agree with Giancarlos. Yes, thank you.
okay, very good. A lively discussion here on gliomas. Thanks a lot, Naru, for another great presentation. You've done a lot of them.
You're
Okay.
welcome.
Okay, we'd like to thank all the panelists also for coming out. And I'm going to stop this and record it, and you can stick around and chat. So thanks a lot.
Okay.